We can multiply using the traditional or the generic rectangle method. If we were going to write a multiplication problem the traditional way, let's say it was 24 times 5, this is how we would write it the traditional method way. And if we were going to do the same problem using the generic rectangle method, we would take the first factor, 24, and write it out in expanded form. And that would be 20 plus 4. This first factor becomes one side of our rectangle, one dimension, and the second factor, 5, becomes the second dimension, or the second side of our rectangle. And then we just fill in the rest of our rectangle. Where we have a plus sign is where we will divide our rectangle so that we have spaces for our partial products. Then we can go ahead and use what we know about basic fact multiplication. The basic fact for 5 times 20, the basic fact is 5 times 2. I know 5 times 2 is 10. And using our patterns of zeros, we know that if the number 20 has 1 0 in it, we need to put 1 0 into our answer, because anything that is a 10 has 1 0 in it, and 10 times anything will end in a 0. Then we go on to our next partial product by multiplying 5 times the 4. I know that's 20. Then we add our partial products together to get our complete product. So I'll add 100 plus 20 to get 120. And that's our complete product. Now to check that and to do the multiplication another way, we would use the traditional method. 5 times 4 is 20. I put down the 0, regroup the 2 into the tens place, and then I need to do 5 times 2 is 10, plus the 2 I regrouped is 12. So my answer is 120, and it matches 120. I know I did a good check, and I got a correct answer. Now these same generic rectangle and traditional methods will work when we have a 2-digit times a 2-digit number, such as if we have the problem 24 times 35. This is the way to write it for the traditional method. And then to write it in the generic rectangle method, I take my first factor, 24, and write it in expanded 20 plus 4. So that's the first dimension of our rectangle. And then the second factor, 35, in expanded form is 30 plus 5. And that's our second side, or our second dimension. I'll draw in the rest of our rectangle, and where there's a plus sign is where we're going to divide our rectangle for the partial products. Using the basic facts, I know 30 times 20, the basic fact is 3 times 2, and that's 6. And we have 2 zeros, so I need to put those 2 zeros in because of my patterns of zeros for multiplying. So 30 times 20 is 600. 30 times 4, the basic fact is 3 times 4, that's 12. Put in one more 0. 30 times 4 is 120. And then 5 times 20, 5 times 2 is 10, 1 0, so put in the 1 0. 5 times 4 is 20. Now these are all of the partial products, so I need to add them together to get a complete product. So I'll start with the greatest partial product, 600, then 120, then 100, and my last one is 20. You noticed I put a check mark next to each one so I wouldn't forget any of them, and add them in the ones place. Get zeros. Tens place, 2 and 2 is 4, and then 6, 7, 8 in the hundreds place. My complete product is 840. Now to do this problem the traditional way, first step is 5 times 4 is 20. Put down the 0, regroup the 2. 5 times 2 is 10, plus the 2 that I regrouped is 12. Now I'm done with the ones place from this factor, and I need to move into the tens place. Because the 3 is in the tens place, I know from my patterns of zeros that anything that's a 10 times another number is going to end in a 0. So this is really 30. So I need to put in that 0 that it's going to end in because it's in the tens place. 3 times 4 is 12. Put down the 2, regroup the 1, and cross off the 2 that I had there from when I was multiplying the 5 because I don't want to get mixed up with them. So now I can do 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 more is 7. Add the partial products together. 0, 4, 800. 840 equals 840. I know I did a good check. So to review what I just did here in multiplying, when I was multiplying by the 5, first I multiplied 5 times 4, and then I multiplied the 5 times the 2. When I multiplied the 5 times 24, that partial product was the 120, just like when I multiplied 5 times 24 up here. Then I multiplied the 30 times the 24. To do that, I multiplied the 3 times the 4 after I put in the 0, 3 times the 4, and then the 3 times the 2. That partial product, 30 times 24, was 720. And then I added them together to get my complete product, 840.